episode 18.
Hello and welcome to Slash Dupe, the mysterious movie pitching podcast with a twist. Each member of today's podcast has been given the same movie or TV title, some time to prepare, and has come to the table to pitch their own unique take on that title. And as always, I'm joined by my Slash Dupe regulars and co-hosts Dan and Ryan. One of them is the Dupe, and after the break we'll be hearing a very special pitch from the Dupe. The Dupe is the one person at the table who has not been given the title in advance, and they will have to improvise their idea at the end of the show, following everybody else's.
Hi Sean, I was wondering what slash dupe actually meant. I haven't really come across that term much in my lifetime.
Do you know, I just want to say it's a fantastic question. It's a great question, and I will answer that question. I will answer that question. A slash dupe is a film in the very early stages of post-production. It's a rough, unfinished version that functions as the building blocks of what a film can become.
Right.
That sultry voice you heard today, thank you for asking that. That's Andy, the sultry voice of Andy, our guest for today's episode of Slash Dupe. How confident are you with your idea for Slash Dupe today?
I don't want to say I'm too confident because I'm quite new to this, but I think it's something that might pique someone's interest if they're feeling very bored. So let's see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. What about everybody else? How are we feeling about today?
Can I just say, Sean, you really channeled some like Charlton Heston in that intro today, didn't you? I didn't know. I felt like I got a bit of Charlton Heston from you when you're doing your intro.
Charlton Heston, the famous NRA gun supporter. Is this some sort of? Did I put the fear of the beauty and fear into you that an automatic
I was thinking
weapon
more
does?
like Soylent Green as people, and damn you dirty apes, that kind of Charlton.
It was a little. Do you know why? If anyone's been listening to this podcast, I think for the last 2 episodes I haven't had to do that intro. So it's like trying to put on an old shoe and my foot's swollen a little bit. So it's like, so yeah, it is a slightly different one. Maybe that's what you're hearing. You're hearing the theatricality we were able to bash out of however many episodes we've done so far. It's all rearing its head again.
I, for today's episode, am very prepared, which is a different format.
Show me up there, Ryan. Lovely.
Yes, well, that's true because today, and I don't know if we've when the last time this actually was. Our dupe is Dan, so it's not actually Ryan today. Ryan has
Have I ever been the dupe?
Nope.
I don't think so.
I don't think I have. I mean, I've been a half dupe for the last 8 episodes.
We'll say nothing.
We
of that,
haven't
don't worry.
had a dupe switch since episode 10.
Since the days of Daria.
Since episode 10.
Who won that one? So there's every chance, Dan.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I am on that. I am Sean, your peerless moderator, and at the end of the episode, I will be picking the winner to go through to the next heat. What happens with the winning idea at the end of the season? You'll have to wait till the halfway point of today's episode to find out. So I can reveal to you that the title for today's Slash Dupe episode is Moll. It's very simple, it's very effective, it's very evocative. I don't know what the process was like, Andy, for you. As you were coming up with your idea for Moll?
It was a very interesting process because my immediate thought turned to the obvious, which was, the old spy behind enemy lines kind of storyline, Mission Impossible-esque. Mm-hmm. But then I started thinking that's way too obvious, way too predictable. So I started thinking about, how about we add an apostrophe to one of the vowels, so Moll. Potentially.
Oh, I like that. Okay, all right. Well, Andy, give us your idea for Moll, or now it's Moll. I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, so yeah, it's basically, I think because we're in lockdown, I was trying to think of something that would cheer people up. It's about time that we need more uplifting, light-hearted movies in the industry, in my opinion, compared to what we've seen. So it's kind of like the comedy story of a young man from Spain who's called Moreno, and Moll is what his friends would call him for short growing up. Mm-hmm. He's a cheery, happy-go-lucky kind of guy who, after years of studying and making his way through the educational system and living with his parents, he's finally able to move out of his parents' house. And before he kind of goes to find a job, he kind of wants to go on a bit of an adventure. where near the area of where he lives in Spain. So he's living in South Spain. So this is a great opportunity for him to explore the South Spanish culture a bit more, and basically just escape his parents. He just wants that freedom.
Yeah.
So what he does is he goes out, he moves into a house, and the story is about him actually going through a series of shared housing experiences in a succession of cities within South Spain.
Okay.
And each house is basically more crazy than the previous house. So he's moving into a house. He encounters I don't know how much to give away at this point, how much you'd like me to give away, but every house he goes to,
give it all away, I reckon.
Everything. Give everything away.
Yeah. Okay. So the first house he goes to is basically like a society of like Harley Davidson, like a Harley Davidson gang. He
like a clubhouse.
He gets in just it was super cheap. He was wondering why. He saw it on the internet. Turns up, there's a lovely woman at the door who basically accepts him as a tenant because she likes him, he likes her. And then after a couple of days, he realizes it's actually the enclave of kind of like Harley Davidson sort of metal bike gang. So that's that. And then the kind of craziness that ensues from that is quite interesting. Then he doesn't last long there. He doesn't really fit in, he feels. So he moves on to the next house. And this one is it's basically like a dysfunctional gypsy family, of which there are quite a few in Spain. But they're lovely, and it's kind of like a comedy. There's a lot of opportunity with this idea to kind of include lots of sort of sub stories that are quite funny. And it's quite a scalable idea, which I like. So you can go to as many houses as he likes, and that kind of formulates the adventure.
Also, the traveling aspect will connect with him, won't it? Because he's traveling himself. So the travelers that they almost could, for a brief moment, find that sort of kinship. They have some similarities, and then they have some differences.
Exactly. And I really like what you said there, because it kind of, it relates to that sort of coming of age, uplifting, feel good type of movie, of someone kind of, not only maturing, but we can add comedy around it, we can add adventure around it. And because it's set in Spain, I was kind of keen on having a sort of more alternative cast, predominantly to give lesser known actors like the opportunity to shine, and give them a chance, career wise. But I was kind of thinking, in terms of actors, almost like a Latino version of a kind of like Michael Cera sort of thing. That's where I'm going with that. You could see Michael Cera do that if it was like a US based kind of movie.
He has a sort of awkward confidence, doesn't he? He's sort of confident, but he's not comfortable. It's a very unusual mix, but I can see that totally in someone who is sort of going from place to place. Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know enough about the industry to come up with too many names, but a couple of names I could think of, almost like a younger version of Michael Pena, who's an actor who's been in quite a lot of comedies.
Yeah,
and Michael Pena, although he's considered a good actor and he's been in a lot of movies, he's only actually kind of headlined one movie quite a few years ago. So this could be a chance to give him the spotlight that he deserves, sort of thing.
He's a really sensitive actor, and he really genuinely he's a little bit like Nick Cage is another one. Like, you just think they just come up and do their thing, and like they're sort of light and funny, but actually they really put real thought into the philosophy of their characters and get under the skin of their characters. So like Michael Pena, when you see him interviewed, I watched him do like a career retrospective. He's a really genuinely thoughtful actor. He doesn't take the roles lightly, and he doesn't take his choices within the roles lightly. So I love that. It's sort of like, if you could find someone with that spark, but younger, I can totally buy that as a lead.
Yeah, exactly. Especially because he's quite diverse as in terms of the roles that he can play. He can play serious roles. He can play comedic roles, and I personally feel he maybe he's gone under the radar a little bit, but
definitely.
I think it would be a nice fit for this.
So after playing one of the 3 wombats, which is probably the best bit in the entire of Ant-Man, and I'm holding that out on that. But that scene, his description scenes in Ant-Man are probably the best thing in it.
Yeah.
Maybe up there in the entire Marvel pantheon, maybe, in terms of scenes. I'm going to go out there and say it.
Is that where he's like over-explaining a situation when he doesn't need to?
And he's like,
But Sean, as you were saying, like I watched the interview where he says he based that character off of like a wannabe like friend of his that was like a shit gangbanger who was like trying to be like a gangbanger, but I see what you mean by that. He sort of there's that thoughtful process behind it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the crux of it. And then along the adventure, how many houses he moves into, you know, is an option. Maybe 3 to 5 as part of this movie plot. He encounters love along the way. He encounters solitude. He encounters that constant battle of him trying to fit in to places he goes to, but because he's going into these dysfunctional places through sheer unlucky random coincidence, you know, it does have its really funny side, but there could be an underlying message there as well that viewers could interpret.
So it's interesting that I sort of see this as what I would like to see, and I think this is I'd definitely be doing too many of these with Sean because I feel like this is the question that he would ask whether you'd want to see. But I like to think that he would learn something from each house that he went to, right? So although you said they are dysfunctional, like they seem dysfunctional on the outside. So yes, he ends up living in a chapter house with a bunch of Harley Davidson bikers, right? But they are a family. They all stick up for each other. It's like I know that you're running away from, or you're moving out from away from your parents, but like my parents are over there, and there's like 2 old bikers like still like in the leathers, like still riding hard or like in the sidecar together, and he's like, I go everywhere with my parents, I couldn't imagine a life without them. And he goes to the Travelers, and they're like, you know, we get you know, people call us gypsies, but we're not like that. You know, we share, we like love, we have stories, you know, we're not magic, there's not gypsy. So it's like I like the idea of that as him leaving that his world, and although he's done education, everything like that, he learns something from each house that he's in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would fit in really well because you know, if it's a coming of age type of movie, I think that really plays in quite nicely. Yeah.
It sort of reminded me of all of the people that he meets in Curious Case of Benjamin Button, how he like meets all the different people and they all sort of teach him something. That's the vibe I got, and maybe that's also because I love Fincher, but that's the vibe I got like when you were describing Spanish.
When is this film? Like, is this film now, or is it recorded in a previous era? I only say this because for some reason me and my wife watched Sister Act last week.
Right, okay, yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I'm looking forward to seeing how this links into what we're talking about.
No, well, what happened was it held up really well.
Right,
is what happened.
Yeah,
like I watched Ghostbusters a couple of weeks ago with my little one because he'd watched the new one, wanted to watch the old one, and it didn't, in my opinion, hold up as well as you'd want it to. Like the memories I have of it as a child.
The nostalgia held a lot of it together.
Yeah. And also for him, he didn't hold because it was too much talking.
Yeah.
Like in the 80s, there was loads more chat. There was lots more dialogue.
Yeah.
There wasn't as much action. Yeah. There's only about 2 ghost scenes in, you know, Slimer scene and the end scene. And that's about it. And the library at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everything else is chat and discussion and, you know, Bill Murray being sleazy. And that's basically Ghostbusters. But the newer one has so much more action. And this feels like a more dialogue-y
absolutely
thing, but more, but actually feels quite mainstream. So it felt like it would be more old school era than modern era. Does that make sense? And like Sister Act held up really well, but there was loads of talking in it.
Yeah.
And like loads of really great on-screen Maggie Smith, Whoopi Goldberg, excellent moments, but just nothing really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it wasn't.
I know
like,
what you mean. Well, there was sort of like a golden age of it. Ironically, like someone like Alfonso Cuarón, the director, the Spanish language director, he started with these sorts of films. So like Spanish language films have a really great history of these kinds of films. So I love that it's it's very different to what we've normally had on Slash Dupe, actually.
Yeah.
And and then what he's gone on to do, he sort of used Children of Men as a stepping stone, then went into things like Gravity, and so he's gone from this sort of intimate small filmmaking with Y Tu Mamá También, and has gone up to something like Gravity. So it's quite interesting that there was this golden age of sort of in Spanish language indie cinema.
I'm so glad you guys have said that, because that's exactly what I had in my mind when I was coming up with this idea, is that it would be great to set it in a past era where things were maybe a bit more liberal, and like you said, Dan, literally I was thinking the 80s, just where things were a bit more, anything more could happen, and now things are a bit more predictable and etc. And I foresee it as the kind of movie you would see in the international film festival like Cannes or something.
Yeah.
It's maybe a director that's not so well known, who's moving up in the scene, and he's quite talented, and he maybe doesn't have the biggest budget in the world, and this story allows for him to make good use of a low budget to make quite a good film out of that. So I think you guys were 100%. Yeah.
So Andy, being a native Spaniard, is this film in Spanish, or do we get a bad dub, or what's the sort of?
Yeah, and are you drawing from your own experiences of Spain in any of these elements? But we just don't know that. Where are you drawing from?
It's a good question. I'm kind of drawing it more from my university experience here in the UK,
right?
Where I just had a series of housemates where I was like, you literally couldn't write this up, and I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of depends really what the circumstance would be. It could go either way. You could have it dubbed for the international audience on it. There's some success with international series like on Netflix, like Money Heist, etc. That is Spanish made, Spanish spoken and written, but you've got the English dub, and it's proved pretty successful internationally. And for me, it kind of does add that level of authenticity as well. If you're an international viewer, you get transported to 1980 Spain, and that's where you are, and all these pretty funny and chaotic things can happen.
I love it. So then, how are you how are you feeling for music, soundtrack, score, or how you what's the? Because I have to say that I've had this argument. I had this conversation with a friend of mine actually, who lived in Barcelona for a long time, and then Sitges. He lived in Sitges for a while, and he is in love with Spanish cinema. And due to my cinema education, just missed Spain out completely. So I'm really sort of I'm virginal in the ways of Spanish language cinema. So I don't know. Where you would go for something like a soundtrack. I only know a more conventional sort of Latin sound. I don't know how you feel, what you would feel it should be like.
It's quite personal, but when I think of the storyline and I think of the feelings it evokes in the audience, I'm thinking like almost a comical, light-hearted sort of slow, almost like a Turkish dance guitar, like the dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 kind of thing. And
we're going to get a copyright strike for that. That was too good.
You probably will. Yeah, I think
I felt like I was there.
Yeah, the recognition software's picked that up straight away. But yeah, it's just some light-hearted, almost like Romany gypsy sort of light background.
I get you.
Music. Yeah. Like the Turkish kind of.
Like it could build in each time he goes to a new place. The music has another layer. So he is almost the music, right? That gets layered upon every time he goes to a new place. He is also laid, and another thing is laid upon him. So by the end of it, it's a full-blown, sort of a piece of, Turkish-inspired music. Where at first it's just a layer or two.
Yeah, it could exactly, and also, I mean, another thought I had for this is we actually don't need a lot of music for this kind of storyline. You almost want because of the storyline, you kind of want the script to sort of talk for itself, excuse the pun, and have people focus more on the script and but you
do you
definitely
want it to feel sort of diegetic, so like the odd radio in the background, or sort of someone playing on the porch, so it feels like it's not layered on, but it is part of what's going on. Does that make sense? So,
Exactly. Just to add to the atmosphere of a particular
yeah.
situation. Clearly, when he's when this person is Moreno is in the metal bike riding enclave house, they, depending on the crazy scenes that come up thereafter, you could have a bit of even like just comical heavy metal going on in the background. We're maybe talking a 10, 15, 30-second scene, and then that just disappears, and it just keeps maybe the audience guessing as to what might happen next.
So how would Moreno get from place to place? I don't know what it's like traveling in the south of Spain. I don't know what this sort of person, how he would get from house to house or abode to abode, and any other. Where else have you got in mind that he would go? Where are some interesting places that he could end up apart from the clubhouse and the caravan park? And
Sure. So the main kind of form of transport, especially in that era, and who he is, would probably be by coach from city to city.
Right.
This storyline, I like its flexibility in that sense as well, because they could go anywhere. They could go along cities in the kind of more rural cultural regions that are kind of more out of the way, where the people have had less exposure to, let's say, the rest of the planet.
Sort of.
And you might have people that are a little bit odd and a little bit, the kind of quirky village people you might find in the middle of the British countryside. You could compare it to that.
I always find, where we love to find places on holiday to go. We love to go in Europe, and we love to find a cottage that's close to like a small town, and nobody speaks English, and we just turn up there and we're weird tourists for a week, and then we go. So I almost like the idea that when he goes to like a sort of provincial small town somewhere, he actually bumps into some foreign tourists, and maybe the language, because it could be from another place, and maybe the language doesn't connect. But because they're both outsiders in this village, despite it being in his native country, they have a little adventure. He stays maybe in their Airbnb somewhere, and as tourists, as they as they also are, something like that.
Yeah. Especially if the director's trying to aim at a particular audience from a particular region, maybe that you could incorporate that, and the tourists are from the region that he's, maybe a group of American or English tourists.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Provide like a cultural reference point, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And you can say a lot with that, just with that sort of microcosm on its own, let alone all of the different places you're going to go to. Yeah,
exactly.
And I think like Europe is very good at making other Europeans look like themselves. Because I was laughing at I've been watching a lot of foreign films recently, and any foreign film, obviously, but not Spanish language at the moment, any foreign film with an English person in it, or a Westerner, or like an American, and I'm particularly looking at I watched Lagan again the other day. They're sort of so comical and over the top villains. You sort of wonder oh my God, were we portraying other nations like this? Is this what they think that we think they're like? And it's just But I think if you sort of treat it with the sort of consummate respect that you would get in this kind of film, you can get like a really good interplay between, even if they don't speak the language. So Andy, how does it end, or what is it? Have you got? Is there more to this story? Have you got anything else to give us? And how does it sort of draw to the?
Yeah, sure. So I think this, for me, the film is more about the journey rather than the destination.
Yeah.
But at the end, I would like to, in the spirit of the kind of mood and tone of the movie, it would be nice for him to find a place where he can, it shows him evolving from one stage of his life to the next. So the movie is one particular stage of his life, which is the adventurous, anything can happen today kind of stage. And then near the end, he meets people on the way. He ends up falling in love, and maybe that can be the next stage of his story, which is after the movie's finished, where he maybe settles down, gets a job with the person that he met along one of these crazy places, and who, like you said earlier, the people that he meets along the way, like Ryan said, not only can they help him almost shape who he is, but they can build some deep bonds with some of these at first strange, crazy people along the way that might be, loyal to him in ways that we might not know until we we tune in and watch the movie.
That was we had a fantastic idea from Andy, personal, but also echoed back to a different era of Spanish language cinema. I'm looking forward to Ryan. So you've had some time to prepare, which is unlike you. You're normally the dupe. So I expect you to have an idea that's 14 times or some significant amount of times better than your usual ideas. So please give us your idea for the title Moll.
Absolutely. So I was looking into what a mole is, aside from a furry creature or a thing with a weird thing with a nose. There's loads of other different versions of it, but I sort of found an interesting, I guess, articulation of the word mole that can also potentially have a couple of meanings, right? So I looked at, like, if you sort of said it quite quickly, mole, doesn't have a lot of meaning, but my mole doesn't have an E at the end of it. It has an L. So it's Moll, like if you took the Y off of Molly, Moll. And a mole is a gangster's wife.
Okay.
So, and I looked into, there are some incredible names of they were also called gun moles, right? Like for gangsters moles. Some amazing names for some of them, right? One woman was called Opal Mack Truck Long. Great. Yes. What a name.
Yes.
Buddha Goodman. It's another
Buddha Goodman. That's a name.
Buddha Goodman. Yeah, obviously very well known gun mole was Bonnie Parker from Bonnie and Clyde. So there's been some interesting wives of gangsters, and I thought I would love to do something like that. I'd love to have one.
Have a gangster wife?
Yeah, I'd love to have a gangster
kind of be
wife.
awesome.
So,
yeah. Although I've met your wife,
bear in
Dan, she's a
mind,
gangster.
Slash Shoot fans, Ryan is still
in her own way.
single. As of the recording of this episode, Ryan is still single, so hit us up on the socials. But I thought that could be what I wanted to go down. However, I did want to stick true to the fact that it's spelt mole, like with an E. So after the success of series such as Narcos, The Wire, I want something that sort of follows in this gangster aesthetic. So it would look and sort of feel like your 1920s, 1930s gangsters, but it would be set in the modern era.
Okay.
And I'm thinking Netflix, Amazon Prime sort of series, 12 episodes, right? Go pushing the boat out on this one.
It's a couple
None
of
this
them might be
episode
duffers,
stuff.
right?
And I'll tell you what, because you need to get a couple of those feeder
filler
episodes in the
ones.
middle, don't you,
Yeah.
to get those ones, right? But I think it will. I'd love, and I'm going to start you off with the trailer. I want the trailer to basically only show like the high life of what this mole is living, like rooms full of like Louis Vuitton shoes and like, having like tennis lessons on like the most amazing grounds and like drinking wine and these beautiful dresses and all this like this high, and the voiceover would be like, I can give you everything you want, like you can have everything you need, and it's this like beautiful thing. And then the last thing you see in the trailer is the mole, who I've picked as Zendaya to play.
Good cast.
Good cast. The last thing you see her with is a Glock, and that's it. That's
Where
that's
is
what
it?
you get
Is
in
it
the
placed in
trailer.
a garter belt or whatever? Classic mole behaviour.
She's just sort of like she's just like holding it. She's just like holding the Glock, sort of like that the scene in Goodfellas where she's holding the gun and she's like, it kind of turns me on. And then she like shoves it in the milk crate or whatever, doesn't she? Like that sort of thing. So she's like just holding Glock, and you're like, okay, cool. And then the beginning of this series is you see her sitting on a veranda with her mob boss husband, John Krasinski.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if this is set in a modern era, I feel like John Krasinski hasn't had the chance to turn on a dime. Like he's played a couple of like army roles, he's played a couple of like hard man roles, but he's not played a sort of.
Even Jack Ryan was an analyst, though. And like he was the sensitive soldier in the 13 Soldiers of Benghazi, right?
Yeah.
So
I sort of want him to be this this like criminal mastermind who obviously is well into his tenure as a mob boss, shall we say? Or it doesn't even have to be the mob, just a criminal, just a gangster boss, right? He's well into his tenure, so obviously all the people who like do stuff for him are the lower rankers, the mooks, shall we say?
Yes,
right. He still gets all the mooks to do everything for him, but he's in like this position of power. He's smart. He knows if the accountant wasn't so shit, I would have said Ben Affleck. But like how
do you know what he's already done? He directed himself in a film where nobody remembers as a gangster, and I think it's called Live by Night, or They Live by Night, or something like that.
But that idea of being quite stoic, but then awful when it comes to it.
Oh, Krasinski's
so I love the idea of them like
casting. Yeah.
So I just like love them just like sitting on the veranda, like playing cards or whatever, and they're both really like loved up with each other. And then he sort of like leans over the veranda, and then there's like 3 people getting drowned in his pool, and he's just like, are you guys finished yet? And then they like don't get thingy, and then it turns out like they're using the pool cleaning vans to like hide people bodies in the chlorine and like dissolve them and shit like that. And then she's like, great, I'm gonna have to get the pool cleaned out, aren't I? And so things like that.
Maybe he started as like a pool cleaner as well, like he started literally as a pool cleaner for like an old mob boss.
It would be,
and he usurped his power from that position.
He started as a cleaner. I think that's where he started, and then he started to get like, because he was at the scenes of all the crimes, he started to get that. But I love the idea of this being, and she's like loving this life. She's loving this life as a gangster's wife. Didn't mean for that to rhyme, but sounds great anyway. In fact, that could be my tagline, just because it rhymes. loving life as a gangster's wife. But and she's like, she's going around doing the stuff. She's got a pen pal that she's got from college, and she's writing them these letters. And then on the flip side of that, you would have the polar opposite of a high life, this like greasy stakeout van with Riz Ahmed playing this cop who would, because he loves doing American accents now for some reason, doesn't he? Yeah. So I don't know why, but he loves doing American accents. But like,
they're not great either. They're not terrible, but they're not great.
Yeah. Maybe he wants to distance himself from Four Lions as much as possible, because he's like doesn't want to be typecast as a terrorist. So like he'll do the American accents. But I love him being this like cop trying to investigate on like the Vice side of it, try to investigate John Krasinski and everything like that. So I find it interesting that like the first 4 episodes are about her life, about what it's like to be in the mob. You see John Krasinski literally crack a couple of skulls, and then like Riz Ahmed's getting closer and closer and closer, and then he like goes to like meet somebody, and it turns out that he's meeting Zendaya, and actually she's been a mole planted in the mob family. And then that's like the and that's why you see it with the Glock, because it's like police issue pistol.
Interesting.
And so and the pen pal that she's been writing to that's from college is the informant, is how she's getting information,
and that's the code.
And she's like writing really in a cipher, actually. And it's like
nice.
And then you find out that basically, so then like this is from episode 5 now, right? This is where we've jumped to. She is recruited out of high school to enter into this program. So she gets, I don't know exactly how, but they basically send her to college to study acting. So obviously that's why she can have a cover, but then also they're training her in like espionage and like counterterrorism and things like that. So she's sort of like going to a college. So if then like when the mob bosses like do the background research on her, they can see that she went to college. Nothing looks weird. That's why she's an actress, so she can actually get away with playing the role, like being quite poker faced when it comes to being the boss's wife. The pen pal that she always sends messages to is someone that's planted at the university, so that checks out. So it's like this whole big thing of like trying to get into this family. And like a Moll and like a Molly, and that's a term for like basically for like a prostitute, right? For like a gangster's. What it was sort of made nice into a gangster's wife, but it comes from even like in Australia, it's considered like a term for a loose woman, shall we say? But yeah, so it's sort of a euphemism for like a prostitute or a whore, according to Wikipedia. So I think that's probably like that's how he has to try and figure out his way to get into the family. Like they have to sort of doll her up while she's in college, and she's working at some like diner trying to be an actress or whatever. Like they have all the backstory for her, and then it's her like training and trying to get into the mob, trying to get John Krasinski to fall in love with her, like finding out about his cleaning part. He's this really quick mover in the mob scene, and they don't know why, and people are afraid of him and they don't know why, because he was just a cleaner, right? And then you find out about him like having dirt on all of the families and actually just having the balls to be like, I've cleaned up all your dead bodies. I'm the person that knows that you took the hit out on the Yakuza, and if they found out about it, then they know exactly where you are, the entire operation, and so that's like how he rises so quickly in this empire. So he doesn't have to be the person that's like the muscle or anything like that. He's like the smarts. He's played the game of chess. I don't know if we've said it before in this, but I think one of the best things about Civil War, the Marvel Civil War, is that the person that does the most damage to superheroes is just a normal person, person without any superpowers whatsoever. And that is sort of quite interesting. You don't have to be this bruiser to be able to make moves and to make things work. You just need to be smart. And so I like the idea of this. And so that's where that's sort of it's like after we've had those sort of, as I said, this is why it's a 12-part series, right? Because you get 4 episodes, 5 to 8 are the sort of the jumping around, the backstory, the like how she met him, and then from like 9 to 12, that's when like the cracks start to show. That's when they're like, okay, we need to move on this guy now. And then obviously when it gets like a season 2 will be like them. At the end of season 1, it's them like raiding the place, like her giving the go ahead to raid the place. But maybe does she like tip Krasinski off to get him out of there because she actually has fallen in love with him, or is like the tip to get him out there because it's part of an even bigger play? And that's obviously what happens if season 2 comes in. That's what the writers have to figure out for that. So that is my quite detailed pitch for Moll. Molly Moll.
I've got a question, Ryan.
Sure.
What's the kind of tone that you like to set for this series? Is it slightly darker, like a Donnie Brasco-esque thing, or is it a bit more like family viewing, like almost like the Blacklist?
No, it is. I think it's got quite what I've written down is like I want it to have the aesthetics of like a gangster, like a 1920s gangster film, but be set in the modern days. So you have that sort of like large, heavy wooden sort of styles of interiors of housing, and her dresses are all quite glamorous and they're in suits, but they're not driving a Cadillac, he's in like a fleet of Range Rovers and stuff like that. So I see it being quite dark. I sort of see it being kind of like Narc, if you've ever seen that. That was quite an interesting like dark film. And
great film. Yeah.
Training Day as well is very gritty. So I like the idea of it for the eyes. It's this beautiful sort of like surreal 1%er lifestyle and design, but there's like it's all built around this seedy underbelly of like
a bit American Gangster, a bit of the flavour of American Gangster.
Yeah, and what was the series with on Sky with the cops?
There's so many of them.
Blue Bloods?
No. With like Woody Harrelson and what's his name? And then the second season was
True Detective.
Oh yeah.
That is the kind of, I think once you
modern
get to
gothic
episode,
you're looking for like not that was almost like a retro gothic, but you're looking for a sort of modern gothic
I think
aesthetic.
once you get to episode 5, the tone shifts because then
that's when we know.
That's when we know that she's actually a mole, and then you learn about all of the stuff, and it sort of flits between this high flying, beautiful looking thing to sort of quite dingy police work.
I'm feeling like the Departed vibes as well.
Yeah,
so would we get
and, like,
Martin Scorsese to do it though? Because he hasn't done. I know he did The Irishman.
He'd do episode
obviously.
1, I think, wouldn't he?
Well, this might be the one where he goes, like, I'll shoot 12 hours of this. Like, and I don't know if he's done that yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't. I know, like, I think he's dipped his toe in The Irishman, but I don't think he's done a TV series like this. But this could be the one, right? It's like all of his gangster films rolled into one, and it's like, I think we could get him on board for this. You see, that's the thing. We get him on board. It's got this sort of Departed meets Goodfellas flavour. He'd absolutely eat it up. And so I guess what I would ask you, spinning off of that, is a lot of these things they're sort of like gangster movies, Vietnam War movies. Like a lot of these types of movies, they live and die on their soundtrack. So like, would you give it? And even American Gangster had an absolutely fantastic score. And like, so how? What's the oral scape, if you will? What are we hearing when we see this thing? Because I can see absolutely what you're saying to me. I can see it. I can't hear it. What are you thinking?
So I think the interesting thing with being in the gangster house, I love there's a certain sort of juxtaposition of like the huge houses with no noise. Like when you hear high heels walking through like a hallway, and you can because the idea is they want peace, and so you have peace, and you don't have music like pumping. I mean, like, I know, like, I can't even make a sandwich without listening to like 5 seconds of a podcast or whatever. Like, I want that sort of music around me, but I like the idea of it being quite open and vacant, and that subsequently makes it quite tense, but you don't know why, because you're in a beautiful location. And then I think definitely the sort of, in terms of the soundtracks and the musics, once you start to move into the more like dingy life of Riz Ahmed as a police officer trying to figure this, as a vice detective trying to figure this out, I think you have that. I think I don't know if it would particularly be sort of music, but it would almost then switch to being quite claustrophobic, like a lot of noise, a lot of sort of like cubicles,
atmospheric kind of noise.
I think it's more, yeah, but like, Dan, you might be able to help me out in this, but sort of like almost like atmospheric, but in like a minor key. So it's just sort of like
atmospheric in a minor key. I've had commissions like that.
Can I just have it in a minor
That's
key?
a lot of detail, isn't it? As a director, I'd be like, that's
that's too much. It's too much, if anything.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting that both of you have said, like, I don't want any music, like, because I think music gets in the way. And I'm not entirely sure that's true.
Okay.
Like, so I think a lot of the shows or films that you have watched that you're like, well, this is great because it's all dialogue and there's no music in it. I dare you to go back and listen to it and see if there's actually music in it.
That's a fair point.
Because most of the time, all the music does is amplify what's going on. Like I did this module for my degree where we watched all of like the 10 greatest film scenes, like Jaws or whatever, and we watched them all, and then we watched them all again without the music behind them, and it's amazing how shit a fin going through the sea with no music is, right? You'd think it was tense. You think those footsteps going down the hallway without sound is tense, but it's only tense if you've had 25 minutes of music. So that the absence of music suddenly becomes, right? So you've got to have that beat. And actually if you've got the sort of with the underneath where you've dropped it down knowing that it's going to build that tension. Michael Caine famously says that, doesn't he? When he's like, when I get a close up, what are you doing? He just says, I just look down the barrel of the music and ask them to tell me what music's playing. That's it. Because he says the music will do the work. Yeah. Barrel of the lens, sorry, yeah. Looks straight down the barrel of the lens and just lets the music do the job. And because he's thinking his character, but the music is telling the audience what the character's thinking. So I just find that really interesting. It's not like any sort of slight on it. It's just really interesting.
No, I think it's a fair point. I didn't really want to, like, I don't want to have cliches in music, but then I don't want something that's going to completely unfit it. So, like, I think the cliche in music in gangster films are either classical or like blues or like sort of that sort of like, it sort of sticks to it has a feel of the underground.
Can I
sort
propose
of
something
style.
then? Because I think what you're doing with this is it's very interesting. It's obviously there are elements of female empowerment. There's also elements of like being a sort of lieutenant, a second in command. This is a person that will spend probably half the time in the house and half the time out by his side. They'll have maids and other things, so there won't be any sort of homemaking responsibilities on her as a gangster's wife. But you would have in the same way that Looper, he created, the soundtrack through using lots of sort of organic materials, pieces of metal and other things. He used a lot of things to create the soundtrack. You could have a soundtrack that's created from the fan of a home computer or the sound of the heating in the house. You could find an atmospheric that comes out of the building that they're in, which has the pool, which has the gangster activities going around it. If you make the building a character and you make all the little sounds you hear, like for example, a good example is like survival horror video games. Like the soundtrack for some of the Resident Evil games and some of the Dead Space games sound like doors slamming, and you're like, that's not, but like where's that fucking door coming from? And you're like, oh no, it's just the soundtrack. It's the soundtrack. But it mimics these things so that you think there's other things going on, in her head, above her, below her, things in the basement, things in the attic.
And the music does help you set a whole bunch of scenes. Like if you want an era, you can spend 25 minutes establishing that with dialogue and costume and whatever, or you can play 10 seconds worth of music from that era and everyone's like, okay, we're in 1950s and 1940s.
I really like the idea. I sort of love the idea maybe of because I've never seen this, is the idea of there being like a lot of punk music when it comes to the police. Because that's a massive thing, right? Because a lot of punk is generally quite anti-establishment, but the idea of it just being a wall of noise.
Well, if Riz Ahmed's department were like a sort of punky department of the police, where they were sort of like given free rein and given this sort of, they're put there because no one thinks they can win. Then you can really bring that up. You show Riz Ahmed at a punk concert at the start. That's your introduction to him. And then somebody calls him out and he goes to the smoking area and they're like, officer, we need you to come in because, this thing's happened and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It's just that's how you can bring this sort of stuff into and blend, as Dan was saying, sort of bring the music.
And it doesn't even need to be music that we recognise. Although I've not really stopped thinking about the Umbrella Academy and the musical supervision that went into that. Like the choice of song at each point when it's needed in the Umbrella Academy is so on point. I'm going to have to watch.
You've talked about it more times than I could. I'm comfortable with not seeing it yet.
But the soundtrack I could listen to alone. Like there's such great choices of music.
I'm writing it down right now.
From all the way around.
Do you know what? There's just a lot of tat out there on streaming services, so you really need a few recommendations, don't you? So you're saying, go on, Andy.
I know. I just think that your average person, I would go as far as to say, doesn't even notice the music. It kind of just adds to their perception of the movie as they're watching it. But
correct.
You guys,
if you took it away, they'd know.
Yeah,
that's
exactly,
the thing. So like, it's voodoo, isn't it? You've got to make sure that the music is doing exactly what you want,
but not too much.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that actually.
So that's probably why I said that before. That maybe no music.
Again, like I say, no slight. It's exactly what you're thinking. Is that you don't want the music to be obvious.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why you get a good music supervisor, don't you? And all of the roles that go into the sound. The mixers, the engineers, everything. It reminds me because I just recently watched Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, the League of Justice, and that is the gold standard of the objectively the wrong piece of music to add to basically every scene.
Yep.
And and I can't even. And this is like the 5th time he's done it. Like he's not got any. Like if you watch Batman v Superman, Sucker Punch, if you watch all the films he's ever done, he cannot pick a music to save his life. He's like tone deaf for what piece of music matches. And I would go as far as to say, now I obviously it's an objectively better film. We could probably fill an entire 10 podcasts with an analysis of a 4-hour, rehash of that movie. But weirdly, the only thing I liked from the original cut of Justice League was the piece of music at the start that either the studios or Joss Whedon put in that intro where Superman's missing. I'm like, that's them doing Zack Snyder better than Zack Snyder. But anyway, I just wanted to put that forward, that's the, if you want an example of the complete polar opposite of what Dan is talking about, you only need look as far as Zack Snyder's Justice League. So, are you there, right? I think you'd frozen.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether that's where we want to stop.
Well, I don't feel like we should
whether...
end your pitch on Zack Snyder's Justice League. I don't feel like it does you a disservice and your idea a disservice.
Okay, give me the marketing question.
Yes. No, you're right. It's a good question to ask.
Right, like I took us on a tangent around from music, but earworms and sort of like that.
Yeah.
In terms of marketing, so what would go with your trailer? What's going to be your oral earworm, but also like what does it look like? What's the visuals? What's there?
I think it will be one of those ones that doesn't particularly get, like, I think those Netflix and Amazons don't have a lot of, they have a lot of cookie trailering, don't they? So you're going off of the back of like Krasinski being a nice guy into sort of like seeing him quite, I wouldn't say haggard, but sort of like suspiciously knowing. You sort of will have him in the sidebars of IMDb or whatever you will, like his sort of face and Zendaya's face. And I think the trailer will end, and I think this is a really interesting line for the film to be, but it would just be like, because obviously it would say Moll, and then the log line is, all I ask is that you trust me.
Nice.
That's good. And if you've got a poster for it, if you've got a poster for us?
Classic.
Not
bunch
back
of
to back.
faces.
Don't go
Star
the old
Wars.
Back to, you love the
Star
back to
Wars,
back.
bunch of faces, mate. That's what it would be.
The old classic, the Goodfellas, bunch of faces.
Bunch of faces.
But then I tell you what you want to do. You want to. It's about Zendaya's Moll character essentially. So you want to have something.
I don't want any of the marketing to give away that she is a
Mole.
No,
I don't. And I like that very much. But she should definitely take prominence in the.
Here's what I find. Okay, here's what I would love to do. Right, and this is. I feel like this is a Zack Snyder thing. I want it to say.
I don't like how this is heading. Yeah.
Right. I want the whole thing. On IMDb, on Amazon, Netflix, wherever it is, I want it to be Moll until episode 4, and then the two L's will like turn sideways into an E, and it will say Moll, and then all of the branding, all of the stuff,
marketing's gonna hate you for that, but
everything changes.
Love it.
But that's what it would like.
I like that.
It would be, and you might get like, because obviously it's going to be massive because I came up with the idea. And we've got, we've got some big names on board, and
Scorsese's on board,
and Scorsese's directing all of it, so you get all of that.
So
it'll be like a whole thing where it's like, they'll make like a big deal out of the change, and then they'll have like a 4-week break. So Screen Rant can be like, the top 10 things you didn't know about the ending of Moll, and it's now changing its name to Moll because of what's going to happen in the second part of the season. And yeah, that's definitely.
Sounds like a big blockbuster kind of budget for
of course.
Like
we
mate, look at the Irish.
Right?
That was like well over $100 million for that. So
yeah, look at that. So
crazy money.
There it is. Moll into Moll. All you have to do is trust me.
Hand over the money, please.
So we heard a robust idea from Ryan, very timely, a lot of complex and interesting modern themes in a classic setting from Ryan's idea from the title Moll. But at this point in the middle of the episode, I think it's worth reminding everybody what happens at the end of the episode when I pick a winner and what happens to that winner. So Dan, take us away. Let us know what happens to the winner of today's episode.
Well, we're just coming up to the end of this segment, this quarter of this season. So there will have been 6 winners in a row by the end of this one, and those 6 are going to go into an adjudicator heat. We've already had 2 of those, and they will take those 6 down to 1, whoever our wonderful adjudicators are. And at the end of our season, we'll have 4 quarters, which will mean we'll have 4 winners from the adjudicator rounds And then we're going to have 2 wild cards, one at least of which will be chosen by you, the listener, to our podcast. And those final 6 will go into a final, and then there can be only one, of which we will make into a trailer.
Highlander style.
Yes, it probably will be like us making it into a trailer. Will probably be basically Highlander. It'll be that high stakes, that messy, that rural and weird, and yeah.
And someone will have their head chopped off.
Yeah, it'll be me. I'm expecting. We're very excited about that, and that's coming up very, very soon. That where we're going to take those 6 and boil it into one winner for the heat. So, Ryan. Okay, I'm used to saying Ryan so much.
that's brilliant. That's what happens when you switch the Dupe over.
I'm just so used to it. Dan, you've had the wonderful experience now that Ryan is used to most weeks, and after you're finished, you can definitely let us know whether it was better, worse, worth it. I'm not sure. I've not been put in that position, and I never will be. But what do you feel? How do you feel about being Dupe? Have you come up with any ideas? Like Ryan will usually give us a rundown of a few different ideas.
I've got big boots to fill with Ryan. He always does this. Seems to participate actively within the session while still coming up with not one but many ideas. So in sort of homage to Ryan's Dupe, I've come up with 3 ideas, of which I think there's one that I'm going to go with. I'm quite interested in. Interestingly enough, Andy, I was just saying to the others a bit earlier that when I heard Moll, the first thing that jumped into my head was Moll.
Yeah.
Moll.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I was like, that's weird. That's weird. Like,
that is weird.
I guess it's just because the training now is to never go with what the word actually means, because
you always try to not be mainstream.
Yeah.
That's right. And then what I thought is, do you know what? Everyone's going to do that. So I'm going to go with it, and I'm glad I did. So the first thing I thought was a good old acronym in honor of Ryan again, and I thought we could go for Mission Outrageous Last Exit, in like a Spaceballs version of Mission Impossible.
I love it.
Basically, a real hijinks, Mel Brooks style Mission Impossible. But then I thought, that's it. That's it, isn't it?
Where do we go from there?
We're done.
Yeah, we all go home.
Then we'll go home. And then I thought I might try an animation about a mole, an actual mole. But then the twist in this is that we see a lot of the film, and I didn't really think that this was the discussion we'd then have, whether it was all through the mole's point of view or whether from some others. But the moles are, historic. We think of them as partially sighted, if not completely blind, right? And that the entire film would be blurry, would be actual partially sighted, and we would have to live through. So it would be really high on the sound, and the atmospherics, and the soundtrack would be off the charts strong, and we'd have to live the life as this mole growing up. And I quite like the idea of that, but then I didn't know where I'd go with it. It feels like that's for someone probably with more experience of that kind of thing than me. Then I thought, right, a mole on the body, and that led me to where we are. So Moll is it's a sci-fi. And there has been a space station on Mars. Oh, it could be another planet, because we've had a lot of things
already.
on Mars.
I love it.
Thanks.
I love it.
Brilliant. Space station on Mars, and it's been active for some time. And they've reported an encounter, a discovery of a new substance. And 3 days later, the space station goes silent. And so a rescue team of only 2 people are sent out to go and explore the space station. And when they get there, they find the notes on this thing, and they found a substance, a small amount of a substance, which happens to be the exact SI unit of 1 mole of a new substance. So mole is the SI unit for measurement of a substance. It's a particular amount of particles And so they found a small amount, 1 mole of this new substance on Mars. And as it goes on, it's one of these sort of sci-fi horror type thriller. You're not quite sure what's going on. Basically, the substance, anyone, or it turns out maybe some kind of organic substance that touches it, it loses exactly 1 mole of its substance over the course of a day. So a mole of it, the exact same amount as the new substance, disappears. So these humans have been dying because bits of their internal parts of their body have been disappearing. So they find 1 mole of substance of their brain missing, or 1 mole of their heart tissue missing, or something like that. I think it's a pair of a man and a woman that go up there, and the man dies within sort of early because he's like the scientist that's checking the substance, and he touches it, and he dies over the next course of the day from like a missing part of his throat or something. Well, what we find later on is that they start coming back to life because those parts of the mole get replaced with another substance, with this, with something like this substance, and throughout the course. So that's the third twist. Then she's also running away from these people and trying to work out what's going on all at the same time. And then it turns out that actually that substance is a probe from another for aliens, let's call them, and they are taking probes, like biopsies of each of these organic substances, and that substance, the mole, is sending it to them so that they can analyze it. They're on basically a research mission as well, and then they're replacing it. So we get this alien contact through, and what we could find is maybe they take bits of her, but they're not vital bits of her, and then she gets slowly replaced. And because she's got some of it in her that isn't in a vital organ, she can then survive the next few transplants or whatever. So she ends up becoming half alien, half herself, as part of this transfer. That's what I went with.
Okay, so I guess what I would first I would ask how's it spelt, the unit of a mole?
It is MOLE.
Okay, well that's perfect, because this is what I would say if I was a studio exec hearing that. I'd go, hey, we've got this franchise we're trying to reboot. It's been rebooted once before, but it didn't go over too well. But it's part of our books, and we want to keep the rights to it. It's John Carpenter did a remake of it in 1982. So, and then there was another one. But I feel like we really want to get to the roots of what made that film so popular and great. The one with Kurt Russell and Keith David in it.
You'd say like what? You really want to keep that thing going, don't you?
Yes,
you really want to keep
that thing going, exactly, that thing. And
they want to capture that thing.
And so what I find fascinating is, first of all, if you were to describe something that you just met on Mars, you would say it's the thing, the mole, the thing is almost interchangeable. Also, Moll, having the element of subterfuge as described in Ryan's pitch, is almost the notion of what the thing is. The thing is a mole within that sort of within Alaska or wherever they were.
And also, it would show up on their bodies of the bits that replaced, like a mole.
It's perfect. So I would say let's make this
meanings.
like this Cloverfield style, like stealth sequel. So they don't know it's a thing sequel until they watch it. Like let's say like Split. So as being a stealth sequel. I don't want to give too much away in case I know everybody's read about it already, knows about it already, but I sort of love the idea of now taking this idea and like, right, how can we make it something that follows on from the thing?
The two characters are definitely called like Kimberly and Mohammed, right? Because then when you shorten those names, it would be like Mo and Lee.
That's okay.
How about Layla? Layla instead of...
Yeah, that's good.
Because it has to be like something that shortens to Lee.
We'll give them that
like
and just change it last
Kimberly,
minute. It's fine. We can change it even like just before we start shooting. So yeah, good idea. We'll keep that in.
Or Lee, I suppose Leah. Yeah, I do.
One of them will be called Carpenter.
Like Mohammed's
that's just the way it's got to be. One of the main characters has to be called Carpenter, and one of them has to be called probably I think it's Howard Hawks did the initial black and white, the thing from beneath the sun. I can't remember what it's called, but he did the initial film.
So Hawks.
Yeah, and the book.
The Thing from Another World.
Yes, and the initial book was written by Campbell. I want to say Joseph Campbell, but that's a different.
So we could have 3 people go up. It doesn't really matter, does it? But basically, they drop off one by one until. And I don't want it to feel like a zombie movie. So maybe they don't all come back to life. Maybe if someone's brain had a bit out and it's replaced, it's not like they actually come to life. It's that their body is like twitching and resulting in it. If their heart has stopped beating because of that, the blood starts pumping around, so their bodies are doing weird things because the blood's actually working now, but the brain is dead.
Yeah.
How tense? How tense? Because you said it was a sci-fi horror, and I absolutely love sci-fi horror. But what kind of level of intensity do you want this to have, like in terms of the horror side of things?
Grow. So I think like they've gone quiet, and everyone's a little bit worried about what's going on because they found a new thing. So they're already nervous going in. Because they're being sent as sort of a cleaning crew to check what's going on, or sort of to discover. But they're not. When they get there and they initially think they've all died from some kind of exposure to this thing, this mole, but not the sort of the level of what's actually happening to them. So they're taking massive precautions. They're just making sure that it's okay. And when they find out that it's okay, and it's not airborne, it's not anything, then they're searching for other clues as to what's going on. And almost that just sets aside. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe there's a few other sort of detritus that they've picked up on the way, so they're not seeing this one because it's such a small amount. It's like it replaced like 12 grams of carbon, so it's not very much. It's a little bit. Maybe there's some other things that they found, and they're searching out whether it's these things, and it's actually
maybe they can discover this slowly as the story goes on through their actions, as opposed to what they say. So they're acting. Someone's in the corner or out of the way, quite suspicious. They're spending too much time in the recreation room, but you go there and there's not much stuff for them to be doing. What they maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got a sort of inherent creepiness to it, hasn't it? And just sort of this strange behaviours, and you're sort of not quite sure who has been affected by this thing or not. I don't know if you. Yeah. So I'm the one sort of forcing it to be the Thing sequel. I don't know.
I really like Dan's idea of it being another alien race doing. So imagine we just sent the Mars rover, right, and it's collecting the samples to be sent back. Now imagine if we got a sample of something organic and we were like, holy bajonkajink, there's we found like blood and veins, and we found another carbon-based life form on this planet.
But we've just
on
scooped
Mars.
a bit out of it.
We would go nuts if we found another carbon. So imagine like the research team on
Neptune.
Chango's.
Oh, it's got to be
74.
Neptune, isn't it? Not enough things.
It's got to be Neptune.
Only since like the 60s and all the Jerry Anderson stuff and all that weird stuff did anyone ever go to Neptune. I love it.
Isn't Neptune that it rains diamonds?
Or Pluto, and they've been spending the last 20 years trying to get it off of Earth's radar. And
they finally got it.
Through some,
because it's too small.
They finally got it. Like, it's not a planet anymore. We don't think of it as a planet anymore. And they've been doing some crazy propaganda to try and stop people thinking about Pluto anymore.
I think on Neptune it rains diamonds, so they're crystal people. That's what they are. But like
nice.
That'd be cool seeing like sort of crystallized aliens.
They get this sample and it's like, oh my god, this is a carbon-based life form that we found on it. And I love that being the sort of, it's not really a twist, but it's like this sort of weird, sort of like a Who Watches the Watchmen. I mean, we're just talking about Zack Snyder all the time now, aren't we? But like, the sort of that weird thing, it's what people believe about aliens is like we can't be the only life form in this entire galaxy. So it's like looking, if is there somebody else looking for life outside of that, like we are?
Yeah, I like the idea that it's sort of the third act, the final act twist is that you see the alien. There is an alien rather than like sort of this zombie sci-fi thriller. It's that there's something else watching them, and that there might be an encounter by the end, which we don't know whether is antagonistic or ultimately almost like ethereal and not quite sure how it's gone. Do you know what I mean? And they're left. the survivor is left on their own. It's like a survivor movie, but not really because of anything sort of nasty or malign, just happenstance. Like these scientists from another planet just happen to have killed. Like, I mean, I guess like we do, don't we, when we test on animals, where we used to test on animals, or like find a new species, the first thing we do is grab one and cut it open. And like they're doing a similar thing, using their technology.
Oh, a little bit of a tangent. And Dan, I know you're sitting next to a piano, but do you know what the notes from Close Encounters of the Third Kind is?
Those ones.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
It's just for your own knowledge, is it, Ryan?
It was just something that was.
What you want those notes every time they strike it to come up, but only like throughout the entire film. So the first time they hit it, it goes do, and like later.
Oh,
on,
is this like a proper deep cut Easter egg? Is it
like a little Easter egg of
another screen
regard,
ran. Oh, 10 things you didn't know about Moll. About Moll. It uses the original notes from Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
IMDb trivia section being updated on the fly.
It only is because, and it just sort of, and maybe it's the thing that links the two ideas, because Sean, I cannot remember which film it is, but obviously the dog at the beginning of The Thing.
Yeah.
Is it Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where they're like?
No,
Yeah,
what
the
you're
dog
thinking of
runs
is
away.
like
No, you're thinking
the film they made in the 2000s that was, or 2010s or whatever, whenever that was actually a prequel to The Thing. So the dog that escapes, a dog escapes at the end of the Mary Elizabeth Winstead The Thing. And it's the dog that is being chased by the Norwegians which genuinely is awesome. And the concept of having a prequel without you realizing it until the end of watching that Thing movie is awesome. It was just not executed as well as it could have been for a variety of different reasons, but not a horrendous version. It's just that the Thing was almost perfect, if not perfect. So, like, speaking of, like, so The Thing had a very sort of, it was very en vogue, actually. Like, that's the thing, like, if you'll excuse the pun, I think that sci-fi horror has to, and always has some kind of, good sci-fi horror always has a parable, it has a theme, it has a reason to exist, it's saying something. Life, to a lesser extent, the film Life with Jake Gyllenhaal, and they deal with a microbe on a space station, but it still has some themes in there. Even Alien, and the Alien series has themes of sort of motherhood and femininity and other sorts of. There's a plethora of other things. The Thing was tied very much into the AIDS crisis and blood and what lurks beneath and this sort of fear at the time. So I wonder what this one has. Like what does if it's made now.
Straight off the bat, it feels like our commercial use of things, like how things are commodities, and like how humans in this particular case are the commodity, and when we become the commodity and the easily sort of disposed of thing, it doesn't feel very nice, and how easy it is. Like we can talk about sort of the use of animals and our ownership. I'm putting inverted commas of the planet. And how very easily we can become the things that are owned, and like there are bigger things than us, and it feels like that. Do you know what I mean? How we dispose of things so quickly nowadays, and to think about how easily we could be disposed of by something else. Yeah,
it's a shame. I mean, I like this idea better than if we were trying to shoehorn in The Thing, but if we were going to go for it, then the tagline would have to be Pluto is the coldest place to hide. And you have that riff off the man is the warmest place to hide. But no, I like this more. So then I'm guessing, like, are you going to go retro vibes? Are you going to give them, like, The Martian was very modern, didn't have that feeling of an archaic science fiction. But then, conversely, same director, Prometheus had the soundtrack and the feeling of a grandiose classic sort of sci-fi. Yeah. So do you know what? I'm starting to realise that the aural scape, the sounds of it, are quite critical to me to understanding the tone of the film, right? When you hear it explained to you, you go, yeah, I get it, but like there's always that missing component, which you were talking about earlier on, Dan, how important that was.
Yeah, I think too futuristic, and we feel like these kind of things aren't so scary anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like the lo-fi and the inability to communication ability, isn't it? So if like when people have got mobile phones in modern, that takes away a lot of the fear in horror, because it used to be I can only get to a landline, or the landline's been unplugged or whatever, and now you have to lose connection. You know, there has to be no signal. They literally have to look at their mobile phone and see no signal for us to be scared for them. There's no way of communication. So I think it has to be in a time when communication is not as easy, because there's no way to get back to Earth and communicate with sort of mission control. So it maybe sort of 80s, 90s feel. I'll actually be really interesting to see when the SI unit of the Moll SI unit changed, because they do, you know, they change and it is probably far too early, but it'd be nice if it was around that time, because it used to be like, I think it was adopted in 2018.
Oh right, okay.
Well, that's wicked. All right. Well, let's have it in 2018. Which is pretty modern. Well, it's modern, which is still not very good at communicating across, because the latest rover went dark, didn't it, for ages, and we were worried it hadn't landed.
But then I kind of like that, because the space tech is still quite lo-fi, isn't it? Because really, it costs too much to re-engineer this kind of stuff, and it has to, I can't remember the film that states this in, so I feel bad for not being able to cite it, but they said, just remember when you're in the rocket that this was built by the lowest bidder. Like, it's like they, you know, so all the components are being, so really this gear, and if you look at some of the gear in certain places at NASA, and when they communicate, it's still the tech they used in the late 60s, early 70s. So I sort of like that it's not retro, but it is by dint of using the technology that we still use, which is still old.
Your soundtrack's probably going to still be bleeps and sort of analog feeling of computers there, but it will have the more modern. There might even be, like, we could have modem noise as well, which has, but also then the later sort of communication dings and little theme tunes.
When they were when they were first, like, Windows sort of 95 and XP and Vista, that sort of era of sounds, like that sort of, it's not new and it's not old. It sort of carries this sort of, it's this middle ground, The
Intel Inside sound audio logo needs to come.
Exactly. So all that sort of soundscape, which actually is something, I know it's a bit nebulous the way we're talking about it, but it is something that you don't hear that era of sound very much in film, to be honest. They go quite retro, quite modern. So that would be interesting.
It was, so Sean, just quickly, it wasn't from a film, it was from a US senator.
What was?
The quote.
Actual life.
The quote. I felt, the actual quote is a guy called John Glenn, US Senator John Glenn. He said, I felt exactly how you would feel if you were getting ready to launch and you were sitting on top of 2 million parts, all built by the lowest bidder on government contracts.
Yeah. I feel like John Glenn was also an astronaut. Am I wrong? Was he a senator after he was an astronaut? Or am I just recognising him from a space film that I saw him in? I might have seen him in Apollo 13 or something, for example. But yeah, fantastic quote.
Nice.
Oh, sorry. No, you're not. It's used in Armageddon.
Oh God,
Steve Buscemi.
I hoped that it would be like Apollo 13 or something. You know, I hoped I was citing something, or First Man. I hoped I was citing something intelligent.
No, Armageddon.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I'll take that. Well, it's still better than Zack Snyder's.
There is a John Glenn that was a third American in space.
There you go. See, at least I'm on track with that. Yeah.
Somewhere.
So, okay. So, and I suppose the last question I would have is, like, it's a strange question to ask, but how would you do the VFX? So I remember when there was this big sort of Moon on a low budget, Duncan Jones' Moon on a low budget, managed to sort of gain quite a lot of attention because it used miniatures and it used practical effects to great effect. And then you had the converse with that with certain other films. So I wonder if you...
Yeah, I definitely want to try and keep it away from CGI, because somehow that makes it less scary. I know that sounds
like with
weird,
The Thing,
but
a remake, if you like, or prequel. Yeah, they use CGI and it took all the horror away.
As soon as we are aware that it stops being... I want it to feel like this could happen now. Do you know what I mean? Like the Mars rover sent a space team, and they've been studying, and it could literally happen now. So we don't want it to feel too fake, I guess. And we're all very aware of it. However good CGI is now, we're very honed in on that, aren't we? I guess. And there's a lot of the practicality that they're missing bits of their body or whatever. That doesn't need to be CGI'd in. Do you know what I mean? That's a very practical thing. I guess meeting the aliens, but then maybe we never actually, you never really see them. Bright lights and whatever can be a thing, or the refraction of light through a diamond.
Yeah,
if we're
that's
talking about
interesting.
them coming from Neptune.
I found like cinematically, Hollywood's been quite poor at maintaining a sense of horror when they introduce an actual alien into the movie, especially CGI. Like, good example is Signs with I think it was Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
And it's going great, and the suspense that builds when you don't see an alien is great, and then you see the alien, and then you see it again, and you're like,
yeah, sure.
But that's it.
Your
that's just
mind
my
comes
thing.
up with something far
why they-
worse than anyone can
Is
imagine.
it why they made the
really.
choice not to see the monster in Bird Box? Wasn't it like there's a rumor, isn't there, that like they saw the monster and it was so ridiculous they were like, let's just not.
Yeah, I think so, and it's definitely like, you have to have a really good reason to introduce the visual of the monster, and then from that you have to have a sort of. There's so many things I think of, like even the Babadook. It's almost scarier when you see the picture that someone's drawn.
Although the xenomorphs in Alien were absolutely brilliant.
They were. I mean,
know
that's
what I mean?
Giga,
Aliens.
but then because he's nuts and his designs are just mind blowing. But then in the first one, I think that's a perfect example of how to use your monster well. And the full reveal only really comes right at the end when she's like, basically in her skimpies and she's about to get into the spacesuit or go to sleep or whatever she's going to do. So it's like right at the point where the character's most vulnerable. That's when you see the full reveal. So yeah, you're right, and it's sort of. It's such a difficult thing to do that. So, but like you said, like you were both saying, like maybe just applying the refraction of light, if they're diamond-based life forms, is genuinely interesting. That's a really great idea in design for an alien, and you don't have to see them. You can maybe just see what that does to the environment, the refraction of that light, and that's all they can see of this thing, perhaps,
Yeah. And I imagine the poster would just be like maybe a Petri dish with the word Moll, and the O is like cut out, isn't it? It's like a bit that's been removed, like a tube.
I like that.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
like that.
So we had 3 extraordinarily different ideas, all from the title Moll. None of them were obvious, which is fantastic. And I don't know where I would have gone with it at all. So it was wonderful to hear 3 different ideas. We had Andy first, Mileno, this couch surfing, house surfing, a young gentleman finding himself running away from home, but finding himself in the south of Spain, crashing on couches, in clubhouses for bikers, caravan parks. I've wanted to use this word for a long time, but it's a Bildungsroman of a story. It's a coming-of-age story. That's the official term for a coming-of-age story, by the way, Bildungsroman story, with this young Michael Peña type finding himself and also finding himself a place to settle down. We had Moll, the gangster film, Moll, the gangster's partner in life and in crime, living the high life. Zendaya playing this Moll, but as a double agent in a 12-part Amazon series that was by Ryan, who wasn't duping today. Dan, who was duping today, his idea for Moll was a sci-fi horror thriller where in space a mole, a unit of a newly discovered organism, is killing and warping and changing these infected people in horrific ways by an alien force where the humans are in fact commodities themselves to be tested on and discarded as a kind of parable or cautionary tale to our current way of living. So I have things slotted into place today, so sometimes I labour. All of the ideas are always of a high standard. Sometimes when I'm picking a winner, I labour over which one. I think things were set out much clearer for me today, but that doesn't mean that they weren't all of the same quality. Because it's interesting for you guys to switch, right, Dan and Ryan? So the switch has been fruitful.
Yeah.
for you, Dan, if not profitable. So it might. So I would definitely say. So for example, it's great to hear you give us multiple ideas. That I like that a lot. That's normally the Ryan shtick, but like to hear you knock off ideas as if they were nothing, but each of them also of the same quality as the one you picked. Yeah, that was fun. And then your main idea, had such vigor. I like it. It's normally the sort of energy and intensity we get from Ryan when he's just only had an hour to cobble something together. So yeah, no, that was I genuinely enjoyed that. And Ryan, your idea was excellent, and an absolute close second. The thing is, absolutely dynamite. Probably the best casting we've had in the. I'm going to say it now. I've probably said this before, but each time it gets better. The best casting we've had out of the entire series of Slash Dupe so far. Those three lead players are just, I can see them in the roles. They're against type as well in many ways. It's honestly dynamite. And what troubles me about this idea is that it's genuinely too legit to win. If you've known anything about Slash Dupe, it's that the better an idea is, I can't put it through to Slash Dupe to make into a trailer. That's nonsense. What I want to do is develop it with you and put it forward to pitch it to Amazon Prime, right? Which is a legit thing that we can do. So like the idea is too good. Like even if we don't get Scorsese, you'd get one of the heavyweights, right? With
Bezos money, we can get Scorsese.
Yeah, that's true, mate. Especially if he's going to do a 12-parter, right? And even if we had to put it to 10 parts, we'd do it.
Let's get him back up there, make an excellent film. We can take the money from
He'd love that, wouldn't he, having Scorsese on the payroll? But I seriously mean that. I mean, it's got themes of female empowerment, police authority. It's exceedingly timely, and I would nick it and write it tomorrow if I could. So I genuinely think it's a sort of idea where I think you all know what I mean when I say it's too good. It's too good for Slash Dupe. I mean, the first episode alone had.
Also, we'd have to make the trailer. That's the other.
And
thing,
I'm not
right?
casting anyone except
No.
Zendaya.
Go back to the compliments. None of the problems with the trailer. Go back to the compliments.
So I think Andy's idea probably wins out for me purely on the basis of it being something that's very just completely tonally different to something that we've had before, and really sort of
thank you.
Sort of fits
really
it.
Appreciate it.
No, the thing is, it really fitted into like a different. It felt like a completely different thing. It feels like it comes from your knowledge and experience and personal experience, even if that stuff has then been mixed with sort of other influences of yours. And it's nice to have a Spanish language sort of film in there. I sort of, what I know of Spanish language films, they have a wonderful sort of, there's a real freedom in their films. And I don't know why. I think I need to know.
That's genuinely what I would want the audience to feel watching this is a feel good. Yeah, and this is about a guy who's like backpacking across South Spain, and freedom is really, really great description of it.
And do you know what? If I may, I think that like the idea of it ending with him sort of having the sort of beginnings of him settling down, I find that really fascinating, especially at the age that I'm at now. I used to think that settling down was synonymous with losing your freedom, but I actually think genuinely when you settle down with somebody that you love, or even in a country that you love, or even in a place that you love, or in a job that you love, if you settle down in these things, it actually, and it's the right thing for you, it actually gives you more freedom, right? I know that sounds bonkers because when I was 20 odd, I would have thought that it was.
It's not the end; it's the beginning of the next chapter.
Absolutely,
that's how I would.
Yeah. So it's not even bittersweet when his freedom is altered at the end of the film. It's actually sweet. It's the right thing to have happened to him at the end. I felt that, and so I'm really proud and happy to be able to cast you as the winner today, Andy. If you'll take that crown.
Thank you very much.
Congrats.
That's great, and it's been lovely doing this with you guys, and it's been a lot of fun.
Mate. No, it's an absolute pleasure from our end. And Dan was robbed tenfold. Now that's going to be our new hashtag because he came up with so many ideas. He was duping today. I bet it was a shoe-in, right? It was duping today. It's his first go. Of course, I'm going to go easy on him. Of course, I'm going to have to pick Dan. I feel sorry for him, but no. Your idea wasn't bad enough for me to give you the sympathy win.
Well, interestingly, the sci-fi horror, and this is why I liked Dan's pitch as well, is that was my second idea. And I was thinking all these different ways I just couldn't quite find the right fit. I was thinking of a planet, then I was thinking of a spaceship, and then a station. Didn't quite fit, and then I decided to go a different way. But you guys had some really good ideas as well.
Yeah, absolutely they did. And maybe we'll have you back, Andy, and throw in something that might have just a slight sci-fi edge to it, so you can give us like a sci-fi pitch next time. So, Ryan, where can people get a hold of us if they want to find out more? Like my review for the Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is up on Letterboxd as we speak, and it's as long as the movie. I mean, I just couldn't help myself. But anyway, that's a shameless plug. But carry on.
You can find us on all socials at /Dupe. I think I've said before, but we are kings of the Google SEO. I haven't checked Ask Jeeves if that's even still a search engine anymore, but you can just Google /Dupe. And honestly, we're the only thing that's using it, except like one Wiktionary entry. So that literally will give you everything you need to know, but you can find us on every social. We've got a Patreon as well. We've got a Reddit community as well. So just search /Dupe wherever you listen to good podcasts or wherever you want to watch fantastic videos of us, and get involved. Let us know. Show us one of your moles, preferably like a nice one, but like, you know.
Yeah, and what's your, let us know, let's deftly, I mean, I'm happy to get a picture of someone's mole, but what I would like underneath that picture is I would like to also have their pitch for their /Dupe idea for Moll. We've got Taj, our super fan Taj is absolutely killing it with his ideas. And we're going to definitely ask him to come on, although I fear that if we ask him to come on, it will stop him from giving us such great interaction and content on our sort of Facebook page and on our Instagram and everything.
So good.
But yeah, so please get involved. Let us know what you think. Give us some ideas for titles, because we might run out one day and we want to be able to cite you and thank you for giving us your ideas. And if you want to get on the podcast as well, you just got to reach out to us. Just DM one of us. We'd love to. If you're interested, we'd love to have you on. If this is the kind of thing you enjoy, I know I've found it like a real reprieve, like during the pandemic, just to be able to just be silly creative, just be silly. And if your idea is so I always make them serious anyway, because that's my thing. But if you want to, if you just have something silly and you want to just create for the sake of creation, I hope that that's some of the, something you can get from us, and that's something we can give to you. So with that, it leads me to thank Andy for being our guest today. Thank you very much, Dan and Ryan. Thank you for this episode today.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
I'm glad you guys like that. I was just like, don't
cracking,
fuck this
mate.
up, Andrew.
It's great, mate. It's great.
Andy, can I have the log line for the film in Spanish? And I feel like this is the bit Dan.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So give it. The log line is basically just if you could sum it up in one or two sentences. How
in
would
Spanish?
You do it? Yeah,
In
that'd be
Spanish.
amazing. It feels right, doesn't it?
Straight.
Okay. Así que la película es sobre una persona que se llama Molle, o corto para Moleno, y es sobre él intentando descubrir su personalidad, donde hay amor y donde está intentando encontrar algo en su vida para ir al siguiente paso de su vida, una aventura.
Recorded in the Capo Studios, 2021. What's up, danger?